Welcome to Sexually Charged Radio. I'm one of your co-hosts, Thomas, and I'm here with
Ruthie
and
Sophie
with
Sheila.
And we're here today to talk about the wonderful things that involve sex, gender, sexuality, relationships, and everything in between. But before we get into that, we always like to start with a little bit of an icebreaker, have some fun. You get to know us a little bit more. So the question I have for my wonderful panel of co-hosts here today, if you could be a unicorn, what color unicorn would you be?
Oh, Thomas. It's so good.
I already got mine.
Oh, you got it? I'm not ready. So
All right, Sheila.
I'd be holographic.
Oh.
Because I'd be all the colors. But then I'd have a holographic horn, but then my body would be nice lilac color. Because who doesn't love lilac?
Mm.
It's true. We are in a lilac room right now. Yes. Do you know?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, mauve. So, yeah, we're in the purple spectrum here.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that, like, the cool watercolors, like that blue-green purpley kind of shimmer would probably go for me. I don't think any of us are good at picking nobody's just like, red. You know? It's not. Oh, do you have it? Is that you?
No. I don't look good in red.
Okay. Fair. Not many people do.
I feel like so normally I would have said purple, but I feel like that's just going into like the pattern. And so I would like a pinkish, like sunset color.
Oh, is there oranges in there too?
There would be some like orange, there would be some red, and there would be some purple. So like my body as a unicorn would actually look like a sunset. So the top of it would be like a dark blue, and like down at my feet would be like the fiery
so you'd
red.
be a gradient.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I like the way you're gesturing to like describe, like you're doing
where
this
my
whole,
hooves
like,
would
beautiful,
be.
where the fingers on the hand and stuff. This is such. That was a wonderful question. Also, I think you would look good in red. Do you not wear? I think I see you in red satin. I think that's a good look for you. Maybe someday.
Everyone looks good in red satin.
I mean, at least the shoes. Anyway.
This is very pertinent because I'm going to be at my practicum for Halloween, so I can't avoid dressing up, and I'm going to be a unicorn.
That's phenomenal. Do you have like a horn and all that stuff?
I have a horn and a tail, like a yarn braided tail. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. That makes me really happy. Every year for Halloween, I think of what I'm going to be, and then I don't do it. So now the running joke is what I'm not going to be for Halloween. But maybe I'll be something this year, as I say every year. So we have this research study that we want to talk about. Can I grab the paper so I can read the title? So IFL, I don't know if I'm not allowed to say it. So if you are on Facebook or social media, you know that there's an I Love Science thing. And they post summaries of different research studies. So there was one that they posted very recently as of this recording, which was, according to a U.S. study, these are the two most popular forms of sexual behavior, which, by the way, just had to do with snuggly romantic kind of behaviors for all genders. And so then I read it, and I found the summary to be a bit heteronormative and brief, as such press release things often are. So I went and looked at the original study to see what was what with that. And it's called Sexual Diversity in the United States. It results from a nationally representative probability sample of adult women and men. If your eyes roll back in your head or you fell asleep while I was saying that, don't worry. We're not going to keep the highest sciencey language to the whole conversation by any means. There are 6 authors on this article for this study. Debbie Herbenek is the first author, and if you are into sex nerdery, you might recognize her name. And in 2015, they sampled over 2,000 adults, slightly more women than men in that, but not too far from 50-50, about sexual activities and behaviors that they had done, and also like what they were interested in or wanted to do, whether they were doing those things or not. And they divided it by men and women. I do not know how they define men and women. And they also divided it by age brackets. So you had people who were 18 to 24, 25 to 29, 30 to 39, and so on up by decades at that point. And they asked about a whole bunch of different behaviors and things like that. So we read through it, and I thought it would be interesting to just kind of talk about what stood out to us about this. And I think it's hard to read something like this and not think about yourself or the people you know, and also perhaps how this might influence how we talk about sex with other people as well, just by getting an idea of kind of what these numbers are that these 2,000 plus people were not doing. What are some of the first things that came to mind to people when they read this? Yeah.
Well, the first thing that popped out to me was I was looking at the big table, and I saw the age bracket for 70 plus. And I am very interested in the studies regarding the older population because I do feel like they are left out a lot. And there's a lot of stereotypes against them, and people think that, they just aren't sexual beings, when really that they are. And this study mentioned how there's, I think it was 22% of 70 plus men. I could be wrong. I don't have the graph in front of me.
Yeah. Which behavior am I looking at?
Watching sexually explicit material. I think it was
the porn question.
Yes.
Yep.
So there were 250 people in this age bracket who took the study. Just to contextualize that while you're looking it up. And it wasn't masturbating in front of a partner. It wasn't spanking or being spanked. Let's look at it. So it's divided up by the type of behaviors in here. Gone to strip club. It's in this section, right?
It's this one right here.
You got it?
So,
What was the
watch
number?
sexually explicit videos or DVDs of bracket porn. It was 22.7 in the past month, and the 70 plus for men.
Yes.
So I found that I was very pleased that they did include this age group, and that it shows that they are still engaging in sexual behaviors.
Absolutely. I mean, I hope that I do not stop engaging in sexual behaviors. I know when I go in front of a lecture class and I start talking about older adults and sex, there's a lot of squirming and a lot of ooh, and I'm like, when do you plan to stop? And I've actually had some people answer that, and they've given me really frightening answers, like they feel like 30 is very old if they're in high school, and that they expect to not be sexual after 30. I'm like, I am much over 30. Anyway, yeah, so I'm glad that was included in here, and it's always like heartening to see happy numbers for that. Although looked through a sexually explicit magazine, the numbers were low. But it's actually hard to kind of find magazines anymore. That's really not such a thing.
And even if you look at the same bracket, if you go up to use the phone app, it's 0, and that is a little bit expected. And again, I don't want to play into the stereotypes.
It's higher for younger people.
Yes, much higher.
Technology works like that. You know?
But it's interesting if you look at that same behavior of watching a movie or DVD of porn and look at the 70 plus age group for women, it's 1% in the past month have done that.
Yes, versus 22.7
for men, and
in the 70 plus range. Yeah.
And so if we think about that sort of aging population, but what behaviors are done, and why might that be? Why, do we have any thoughts as to why there might be such a large difference between genders in that age group?
I have a lot of thoughts. Well, porn has largely been marketed until recently to people who are cis male identified and straight cis male identified especially. Not that there hasn't been plenty of gay porn, but it isn't maybe marketed as obviously, unless you know where to look for and what you're looking for. So you have people who have had a longer lifetime of accumulating items like that, and perhaps of gaining comfort and looking for it, but also it was made for them, which doesn't mean that all men will like the way porn is made, or even that porn is made in a way that men actually do like. It could just be that they're told that this is what they should like, and some will like it and some will not. But, oh boy, when I watch straight porn, and I watch really mainstream straight porn, I tend to be hyper aware that a certain number of the female actresses don't necessarily look like they want to be there in ways that seem authentic to me. Like I can kind of tell they're acting. Or part of their acting might be acting like they don't want to be there. That could also be part of it too. And I wonder how much that affects female viewers of porn too. So you can just decide not to watch any of that. Nowadays, I think there's so much a more broad range of available porn for all kinds of genders and all kinds of ways to view it. But that's kind of my generation and younger, I think. What do you two think?
Just thinking, I know how some surveys people might not admit it, so there could be that factor. They feel embarrassed to admit it because we've kind of, as female, I know we've kind of been hush, hush, don't talk about your sexuality. And if they're at that age, they may have grown up in that kind of area of don't talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree. I would just agree.
And, there are whole websites now dedicated to, porn for female viewers and stuff like that. And there can be some problems with that too, but I can consistently see these blog entries like top 10 Tumblrs for women looking at porn and stuff like that. And so there's maybe a push to do things a little bit differently, but that is fairly recent, I think. Thomas, what do you think? You posed the question.
Yeah, well, so I have the hindsight or insight of having gone last and talking about this.
Mm-hmm.
But if you end up looking at the article as well, and you look at individuals who are categorized in the study as women, and for this behavior of watching sexually explicit videos or DVDs, and you look across the age brackets, actually the only age range where women view porn more than the 70 plus age group of men is the 25 to 29-year-old women. All the others are lower than 22.7%. So I do think that there is this gendered norm that we're dealing with here. But I think that it's also an aspect of, socialization. If someone's 70 plus right now, when they were going through their sexual maturity, what was the expectation put on them at that point in time? And is there sex education available for seniors? I know there is some, but it's certainly not as common as it needs to be, especially considering we see the vast spread of STIs among senior citizens.
People are doing it.
So I think there's some interesting things here about looking across different age groups, but thinking of individuals also as cohorts about when they were raised, what were their expectations, and how do those things change across the lifespan.
Well, I'm also thinking of different media being attractive to different people. So I've scrolled up to Read's erotic stories.
I was just looking at that.
Yeah, and if we look at the younger age brackets for it, we see that the numbers for women are comparably higher than the numbers for men. And I wish people could see that I'm thinking and sometimes gesturing air quotes all over the place around when I say women and men. The numbers kind of even out in the averages because older men are reading erotic stories in numbers higher than older women. So older men seem to be engaging with more erotic materials, whether their stories are porn or reporting it anyway, more than women are in those age brackets. But the younger age brackets, women seem to be more into erotic stories, which matches other research that I've read in the past too. I'm also looking at Read's guidebooks or self-help books about sex, and that is just not something people are doing on a monthly basis. Looking at these numbers, I once wrote a self-help book, so
But if you look about it in their lifetime,
well, there you
nearly or over a third of both men and women have looked at a self-help book in relation to their sexual life and sexual well-being. I think that's
that's a huge number.
That is a large number, I think.
Yeah.
Well, that's hopeful for us authors. Looking at things like apps had sex with someone over FaceTime and Skype. So the numbers on this aren't real huge. I think we have this stereotype that young people are just having tons of sex using webcams. This is just a thing. And they're sending naked pictures in huge, huge high amounts. We do have one age bracket. So for the youngest age bracket of women, 18 to 24, 19.5%, so almost 20%, so almost a fifth, reported yes to that. And then every other number is about half that or less. And for men, it was one age bracket higher, 25 to 29. No, sorry, two age brackets higher, 30 to 39, where they got up to 11%. And this is in the past month. So the men's numbers are consistently a lot lower, which kind of matches the feminist critique of who is sending and who's pressured to send and what's expected. But I have stereotypes of guys just sending dick pics like wildfire. So it seems like a small number is just sending out profuse numbers of pictures, where the rest of the folks aren't. So it was interesting for me to think about my own stereotypes of who does what and what we think of young people as doing and what we think of men as doing or women as doing, and then looking at these numbers might not necessarily match our stereotypes. I don't know if I'm ready to give up all of my stereotypes, but now I feel like there are several important grains of salt with it. Maybe I'd want to see more similar studies.
So, Sophie, did you have any pieces from the article that kind of jumped out to you as...
Well, I thought it was interesting the number of behaviors that had occurred over the lifetime but not occurred within the last month. So behaviors like sex in public, tying up, foot-toe sucking or licking, role-playing, whipping, sex via video, going to a strip club, having a threesome, having group sex, viewing sexually explicit magazines, and reading books about sex. All of those things were quite common across the lifetime, but not very common across the last month. So I think it's interesting. It kind of gives me some hope and some... it makes me feel pretty positive that folks are being kind of pretty sexually adventurous, but not a lot going on in those areas over the past month.
So maybe that speaks to something about frequency and how we think maybe everybody's doing some of this stuff all the time or something, and we should be catching up, or everybody's deviant, we hate them, or whatever. But that, people are having some experiences of this across the lifetime, which is great, but maybe we don't need to feel like we're not doing enough if it's not happening for us that
right.
month.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thomas, what are some of the things that stood out to you? Because I could talk about this hang on, we should identify ourselves as a station and show now.
So, for those of you who are listening and are so captivated like we are in this topic, you may have forgotten that you're listening to Sexually Charged Radio at 93.3 FM or at CFRU.ca if you're listening to us online, or maybe you're listening to one of our episodes as a past episode on YouTube, and you've searched Sexually Charged Radio on YouTube and found our episodes.
Maybe you have written questions or topics that we've talked about before. If you did, or if you want to, those get emailed to AskSC, that's the initials for Sexually Charged, at UOGuelph, GUELPH.ca, where fantastic people at Student Wellness will receive those emails and forward some of them on to us. And they do our editing and help with our posting and sometimes come on the show with us, which is awesome too. So we're very fortunate to have that collaboration. Thomas, you were about to share some stuff that stood out to you.
So one of the ones that I was just kind of doing a quick scroll through, and I like to always see what jumps out at me. And I saw the phrase, worn sexy underwear or lingerie.
Yes.
And how appealing is that behavior? So this wasn't about have they ever done this behavior, but did they find it appealing to do this?
To do it or to have it done for them?
It does not actually clarify. So it just says worn sexy underwear or lingerie.
I would assume to do it yourself, hopefully. Yeah, okay.
So for women, 41% said this was very appealing, 38% said somewhat appealing, and only 20% had not appealing or not at all appealing.
What page are you on, Thomas?
This is on page 13 of 23.
Sweet.
But if you look at it from men, so 79% in total said it was very or somewhat appealing of women. But for men, only 12% said it was very appealing, 26% said it was somewhat appealing, but 61, almost 62% said it was not appealing or not at all appealing. And those are, it's almost a complete reverse in terms of the appealing nature of wearing sexy underwear. And I'm just like, okay, that's one of my favorite things in life.
I've had this conversation with groups of guys who come to workshops, or I used to do this workshop called 12 Things You Didn't Know About Women, specifically for straight guys. And by the way, a lot of amazing guys would show up who wanted to be phenomenal partners and wanted to learn more. So kudos to those groups. And we would talk about the prep. So this was heterosexually aimed for this particular group. Mm-hmm. The prep that girlfriends and wives and whoever's might be putting into a sexual experience, like hair and makeup and all the things. Like a lot of effort goes into this. So if you don't notice it or whatever, that can be really a downfall. And hearing from the guys over and over again, well, I would wear sexy underwear, but they don't make any for men. Mm-hmm. They do, and it is often marketed or presumed to be marketed towards gay men. And so this becomes like a whole nother thing too. I thought of that immediately, that either they don't make underwear for men, guys are saying, or that's not for me unless I'm gay, which would then stigmatize it. My shoe smells bad. I'm sorry.
I think it's just, for me, it was, the fact it was a complete opposite. And just this idea of that expectation we put on women to be the ones wearing the sexy underwear, to be wearing the lingerie. And it's like, yeah, but it's not appealing for me to do it as a man. And for me, that was such a shocking set of numbers.
Yeah.
Because also it's something that's relatively easily controllable too. Like if you have the financial means to do it, like you just have to go and buy something.
Right.
It's not necessarily like
you don't have to be good at anything. You don't have, but you do have to be good at feeling okay enough in your body. And I will say that men's sexy underwear does not offer very much coverage, whereas women who are lingerie shopping can think about a range of options where if they feel very insecure about their tummy or something, or their butt, you can get something ruffly or frilly or meshy. Yeah, you can cover that up a little bit and feel better about it. Whereas with guys, it's different types of briefs and potentially matching socks. And
like
maybe
Speedos.
some sort of chest harness if you're really getting into it. But there's not any coverage in this stuff, right? I don't know. What do you think of that?
No, and I fully understand and respect that.
Dudes, go buy some hot undies and feel good about strutting your stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like, when we think about sex and sexuality, like, a lot of it is about, like, exposing body. And I do know that that's an extraordinarily stressful experience for lots of individuals and anxiety-inducing. But, like, in my experience, practice really helps. Like, the more you try wearing different things, the more you do different behaviors, that slowly helps build some of the confidence and build some of your opportunity to say, okay, you know what, like, before I really didn't like that my tummy, like, rolls over, the elastic band of, you know, whatever I'm wearing. And over time, you're kind of like, it does, but I've, like, found this pair that I like when that happens because it makes it look good. I don't know. I think it takes work, it takes effort, but
and it takes positive partnered responses. I think it's really like one person's like, "Oh, that waistband looks a little tight on you," and like, boom, when are you going to do that again? You're gonna have a lot of thoughts and feelings about that for a long time, and you're not thinking, "Wow, this person that I've entrusted with my body and my vulnerability is a jerk." You're thinking, "Oh, my tummy, right? I didn't suck it in well enough, or whatever." So those positive partnered experiences are super important too, and to recognize that says a lot about the person that you're with and not about you, even though we want to internalize their response a lot. I just want to put that out there. If somebody says you don't look good, then they don't look good in your life. That's what I would say about that.
I like that.
But I just want to reaffirm once again that there's no reason to be spending that money if you don't have it, and there are many other ways, or don't want to, and there are many other ways to be sexy.
Absolutely. When the numbers are that largely different, though, I wonder what's going on. But yeah, you know, I mean, and there's also lots of different ways of wearing things that feel sexy. I mean, in some of the sexual subcultures that I frequent, like, it's jeans and a black undershirt and like a pair of work boots, and that is your sexy wear, you know. And it might have been what you actually wore to work that day, and that's the hotness right there. So it does vary by situation. I had something I wanted to mention that I've mentioned 500 times in front of the people sitting around this table. There was one question in all the tables where they only asked it to people who clicked on men as opposed to identifying themselves as women. And that's being the person who does the penetrating during anal sex. And this just really bothered me a lot. First of all, it's operating under the assumption that no women have penises, and we know that anatomy is not the same thing as gender and how we identify our gender and our intuitive sense of self around gender. So that, to me, was not trans cool. And also, it gave no opportunity for anything around strap-ons or anything like that. So it's presuming that men are doing all the penetrating and that men and women are doing the receiving. And that distressed me so much that I actually tweeted the main author for the study. I was like, "Hey, great study. Why didn't we include women being the penetrators, things like strap-ons, etc.?" And the answer was that they had to keep their list of questions tight and tidy, because they had to kind of, you know, the way that the data was collected for this study is expensive. And also you can't have people answering a super forever long survey. So I thought about that, and that's probably a conversation that we might go into in a different episode more in detail. But I noticed that, and then I had a lot of thoughts and feelings about what it's like to look for oneself in a study like this, and what it feels like when you do find yourself and it feels good, like, oh, I like this, but I don't really do it very often. Oh, lots of people like this and don't really do it often. That feels really great. And then when you're like, oh, this is this thing I do. What? They didn't even ask people about that, and that was a personally distressing experience for me. So I thought and felt a lot of things about that. And of course, when I was looking at this, I was also thinking, what this might be like for my clients and workshop attendees as I bring out numbers to help them feel more normalized, but that can also really backfire in a lot of ways as well. I feel like that's not the best note to end this on, but we don't have a lot of time left for this episode. Does anyone have a closing thought that they want to share about this study?
It definitely was diverse. I'll give them that. I felt like, yes, there were places that could be improved, like what you just mentioned.
Sure, but I'm also in a big minority with that too.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I did. I thought it was very well done.
It was exciting. No pun intended. It was exciting to read. It was exciting to read also.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really grateful that this research happens, and it does take a lot of work on a researcher's part to design it and to offer it. And it's really easy to be on the side of the microphone and to always say, well, what about this and what about this? And that's why we do a lot of our own research too, in order to answer those questions and explain those things.
Then they'll read ours and say, what about this? And we'll be like, oh yeah, we couldn't do everything, or we didn't think of it.
It's the beauty of research is there's always something new to do afterwards.
Mm-hmm. I liked a lot about this study. This is one of the best done ones that I've seen as far as different experiences. So, well, thank you everybody for coming to co-host with us on Sexually Charged Radio on 93.3 FM and CFRU.ca if you're online, or on YouTube with Sexually Charged. And we're excited about having you listen to one of our future episodes.